So guys, today back at Kailzie Fishery in Peebles, and what a beautiful morning. Stunning backdrop, and yeah, really happy to be here again. So as you can see, it's flat calm. It's to be a nice day but no wind, so that's going to definitely affect the tactics a bit, so we'll see how we go. So this is me starting my day, and the way I start most days, and that's fishing a damsel in the margins. Something I tend to always do. I mean, I always try and get to a fishery for opening. On this day I was the first person there was no one else, so I like to fish a damsel in and around the margins, and it just gives me that time to get a few bonus fish. Usually the fish are in close straight away. Can usually pick up a couple of fish using this method, and it just lets me observe the water and think about what tactics I'm going to use on that day. So looking around straight away, I could see condition wise it was going to be a tough day. First thing I noticed was how clear the water was. Now it was absolutely gin clear, beautiful, but it makes it a bit trickier fishing. So things I think about when it's clear water conditions is nothing too fast to retrieve. Natural colours tend to go with sort of olive colours, browns, nothing too flash. And method wise, I mean, you could try and stock some fish. The lighting was no good for that at this moment. Needed the sun to be higher. But it's thinking either fishing small and slow or trying to fish static. That's the kind of things straight away that's in my mind when it's absolutely gin clear water. Next thing that was pretty glaringly obviously was it was flat calm. So first things I consider there is need to fish light, so you don't want to be throwing 7 weights about and disturbing the water too much. And also think about how you're going to fish. Even with light floating lines, it's still, when the water conditions are clear and it's flat calm, it can still cause a bit of disturbance on the water, or the fish can see it easier. So I'm always thinking, do I want to fish subsurface with a very slow intermediate line, or again fish static? So I'm starting to build up a picture in my mind now. Also taking into account that it's quite cool. It's not roasting hot, but it is bright sun conditions. So that does mean it probably will push the fish down a little bit. Fish don't like bright sunshine. As we all know, fish don't have eyelids, so when the sun comes out blazing, it tends to push them down a bit. There was some insect life hatching, but I wasn't a proficient hatch or anything like that, so that was something else I was keeping in mind. So after a while on the damsel, had no interest and quickly decided to go on to the bung. Now, it's a good method to think, do they want anything static? You can find out pretty quickly using the bung. Also, it's a good way to gauge what depth they're at. Obviously you can do that using intermediate lines and counting down, but another good way is putting on the bung with a couple of flies at different depths and trying to gauge what depth they're feeding at. So on went the bung, and my spacings were 9 foot to the bung, 3 foot to the first fly and 3 foot to the next fly. I was just using a bung that you could change the depth on, so sometimes I use a bung fly, but I was using a bung that I could adjust the depth quite quickly. So I started off 3 foot and 6 foot. Obviously you want to be using a weight forward floating line when you're using the bung. You don't want to be using any double tapered lines or anything like that. You want something that's going to fire it out. There are lines that are better than others. I find that my Orvis Pro line is quite good for the bung. So on went the Orvis Pro line and set up the bung. For the leader, I tend to favour 6 pound or 7.5 pound, and I use Seaguar Grand Max, so not the subtle version. So yeah, this just gives me enough strength. You do strike into the fish when you're using the bung, so it gives me enough confidence that I'm not going to snap off, and it's a thin enough leader that it won't affect my catch rate. Flies, one fly is definitely most effective when fishing the bung, but what I tend to do is maybe start off with 2, gauge what depth they're feeding at. If they then go off the bite, change to 1 at the depth you know they've been feeding at, and you'll find your catch rate continues to be good. So yeah, 1 fly is optimal. I tend to go barbless. I mean, I was barbless this day anyway because I was fishing catch and release, but even when I'm keeping fish, when I'm fishing the bung, I tend to go barbless. It's just you don't want that risk of getting snapped off, and the poor fish has got your bung trailing along behind it. So I would always advise when you're fishing a bung to go barbless. The flies I would use would depend on the season, depend what insect life was hatching. On this day, it was a bit, I didn't know quite what to do. There wasn't much insect life, but there was some. But tend to use buzzers if there's lots of insects flying about, if not something a bit more leery to attract them in. So on this day, I started off with a buzzer as the first fly, 3 foot down, and an egg pattern on the point. That just gave me a good mix. There were some insects hatching, so I had the buzzer on there. Should they favour that, and also the egg to attract them in, or to get them to take that too. So first fish to the net, and within 5 minutes of going onto the bung, produced results. No great surprise really, conditions were perfect for it, but yeah, cracking little fish. As you can see there, the water clarity is just unbelievable. So yeah, good to get that first fish, and it showed me the fish were sitting that little bit deep with it being bright sun. So yeah, here he goes. So after a while on the bung, I had another 2 fish, one on the buzzer, another one on the egg, and there was a few fish rising, so the insect life had picked up a bit. There was a couple of fish rising, as you can see, one rising there. So I decided to try and give the dries a little go. I was pretty confident the bung was going to continue to work, so what I like to do is just try different methods. There's no point in just casting out the bung and catching fish all day. I wanted to try different methods, so I was switched over to the dries. I had 2 dries on, spaced 6 foot apart, and the flies I was using were just 2 hoppers, so really like using hoppers. So yeah, just different colour variations on a hopper, both size 10. So this was me fishing the dries, and yeah, I had varying success. I mean, there was fish coming up looking at it, but it was very occasional rises. It was a bit bright for the fish, but there were some willing to come up and have a look. I then switched different methods. So I was on it slow intermediate, just creeping back, different patterns, really small nymphs, all sorts. And yeah, I didn't have much joy, but I did spend a couple of hours going through lots of different methods, trying to fish subsurface with different patterns very slowly. But yeah, the fish just weren't wanting to take it, so it really did show how important it is to have all these different tactics in your locker. So I know a lot of people don't like the bung, but this kind of day is perfect for it, and there's some days that the fish just want things static. I don't like to fish the bung all day. I mean, if I had, I think I would have caught many fish. I like to try and see if I can tempt them with some other method. You can see there on the dries, fish actually took that fly and my knot gave, which was frustrating, but barbless hooks, so fly would have dropped straight out again. So that was my only take on the dries, and yeah, my knot gave, which was annoying, but yeah. So I decided after a couple of hours of trying different things, it was clear they weren't up for it, so back on the bung again. So I just stuck with the 3 and 6 foot. It seemed that it was pretty good in the sense that when the clouds came over, they were willing to take it 3 foot, and quite often the buzzer. When the sun was out, the egg at 6 foot was doing the damage. So stuck with that, and as you can see there, into another fish.
I'm just good at caring too much. I'm just good at caring too much. Is it too much to ask that you be all mine? I never was good at sharing. I'm just good at caring too much. I'm just good at caring too much. I'm just good at caring too much. Is it too much to ask that you be all mine? I never was good at sharing. I'm just good at caring too much.
So as the day progressed, I was consistently getting fish on the bung. After trying all the different methods, going back to the bung, yeah, it's one of those days where that method came into its own. The key thing really was mixing up the colours of the eggs. Now, keeping it 3 foot and 6 foot worked well, because when the sun was out, as I say, they would go deeper, and when the cloud cover came over, they were coming up and taking the buzzer quite confidently. So I kept on the buzzer and just kept switching the colour of the egg up. Definitely a good tactic when fishing the bung. Just keep the colours changing, give them something new to look at. You'd be surprised how many fish come and have a look and then go away. And just by keep switching that colour up really does help to keep catching, basically. So another fish there, and yeah, it was a really good day. It was one of these days where, yeah, it was just all about the bung. And there was quite a few other anglers there weren't catching, and it's one of these things. It's some days the bung won't be the least effective method, but I find when it's flat calm like that, quite sunny, and more when you come into winter, it can really come into its own. So enjoyable day with one method only being really successful, and beautiful little spot again down at Kailzie. Really enjoyed my time. Only my second time down there, but definitely be back again. It's just one of those locations, not that big, but just peace and quiet. Never really seems to be that busy if you go at the right time, and I quite like that. So yeah, in summary of my day, I caught, I think it was 10 or 11 fish, and I think if I'd stayed on the bung all day I would have caught probably 20, but went through all the different methods. Only the bung was successful. Started off at 3 and 6 foot, as I say. If I hadn't got a bite of that, I would have changed that to 6 and 9 foot, for example, and then take it for there. But as it happened, 3 and 6 foot, which I started with, was the right number. And yeah, just change up the colour. I was fishing egg patterns. Just keep changing the colours of your flies and you'll keep the interest. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you again soon.